In this video, we will show you how to replace your coolant reservoir on this Ford Ranger with a 2.3 liter engine. This will be located along the passenger side of your engine compartment. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing you want to do is make your way over to the reservoir on the passenger side. Remove the cap and set it aside. Now once you've done so, you're going to want to try to evacuate the coolant from inside of the reservoir. It's common for people to go ahead and drain all the coolant out of the system so you can replace it with the manufacturer's specified coolant. If you didn't want to do so because you knew that the coolant was good, you could just use something like this and carefully remove as much of the coolant as possible. Once you've removed as much of the coolant as possible from the reservoir, you can continue. With that said, we are going to drain all of the coolant, so let's make our way onto the vehicle. Now underneath the front of the vehicle, you're going to find that you have a plate that comes across the entire lower aspect of the radiator. That plate is held in place with 4 13mm headed bolts, 2 along each side. You'll also find that you have 2 push clips, 1 along each side. With that said, start off by removing the mounting bolts, and then you can remove the push clips and lower this plastic unit down and out of the way. Inspect your mounting hardware as you remove it, replace it as necessary. There's this side, I'll do the same on the other side, and then we'll move along to those push clips. For the push clips, you can use a small prying device. I'm using a trim tool. Let's set this aside. Now that we have the plate out of the way, we've exposed the drain for the cooling system. Make sure you have a collection bucket under this area. We'll continue on by turning the plug counterclockwise and wait until we see a steady trickle of fluid coming out of this area into our collection bucket. To help divert this into the collection bucket, I'll just be using a hose here. You don't necessarily have to do this. Keep in mind, coolant is a chemical. Don't get it on your skin or in your eyes. Let's turn this counterclockwise. Let's let this drain. Once you feel as though the coolant has drained out of the system, continue on to closing off your drain. Just make sure the petcock's nice and tight. Get this out of here. At this point, we can put on our plate. Align the push clips along each side, press them into position. Now we can install our 4 mounting bolts, 2 on each side. At this point, everything should be nice and tight underneath the vehicle. Along the back side of the reservoir, we're going to dislodge this unit. You'll find it's held in place with 1 10mm headed bolt. Go ahead and remove that. At this point, you should be able to take hold of this and carefully rest it aside. Now let's continue on to removing 3 hoses from the area. You have 2 up along the top and the other one's behind this area. We'll start up along the top and make our way down. Squeeze the clamp, slide it out of the way, and remove the hose. Just give that hose a little twist to break it free. If you can't break it free, you could also use a hose pick. We'll just give that end a quick inspection, make sure it's soft and pliable, not torn, worn, or damaged in any way. Continue on to the next hose, same process. Now let's move down here for our final hose and squeeze that. Now we can continue on to removing our mounting hardware. You'll find that you have a 13mm headed stud. Let's remove that first. Now we can move down in this area. Now in this area you'll find an 11mm headed mounting nut. Up in this area, we'll be removing a 10mm headed bolt. At this point, we can take hold of this and lift it up and out of here. Keep in mind, there could potentially still be coolant caught in the area. Let's give this a little wiggle. You're going to find that it's stuck underneath the washer fluid tank. Generally, you can just twist and flex as needed and pull this up and out of place. And there it is, friend. Okay, friend, let's get ready to install our brand new coolant reservoir. We'll start with the lower hose here. Go ahead and slide that into place and install the clamp. Just make sure we're pressing that on there as far as possible. For these clamps, if it's stuck in the unlocked position, you want to make your way underneath the ear and gently pry, but keep in mind it is spring-loaded. Don't have your fingers in a pinch point. There we are. Now I'll just make an adjustment as needed to put it into the perfect position. Take hold of that hose, try to pull it off of there. Assuming that's good, we'll continue on. At this point, we'll be taking the coolant reservoir and setting it into the washer fluid reservoir. You will find that you have one little locating point in between the two. Just slide this right down in. As you bring this into position, you'll also be aligning your mounting bolt holes. We'll just flex this a little bit if you need to slide it over the stud. Perfect. Continue on to starting in all of your mounting hardware. We'll start with the stud in between the two reservoirs. Line this up. Now we are not going to tighten any of the mounting hardware until we have all of it started in. Now we can start the nut on the stud. We'll make our way up from there. Okay, let's snug them up. Let's start with this stud. Make our way down here. Can get this hose on here. Let's make our way over here to the last hose. Now we can get this in place. You will find that the bracket will slide into the fender. It has a small slot on the fender there. Once you have that in there, continue on to aligning your mounting bolt hole. Start in that 10mm headed bolt and snug it up. Now it's time to fill the cooling system. When doing so, it's important to pay attention to the chart that's located along the front of the coolant reservoir. We want to be at approximately the maximum line when everything's said and done. What you'll notice is as you add coolant, it's going to start making its way down into the system and air will make its way up. meaning the coolant level will continue making its way down. Now, some people will try to use a funnel to fill the cooling system, in which case you want to be careful in this instance because you don't want to go past the maximum line. The funnel's pretty much just great for not making a mess. Other than that, if you did happen to have a specialty tool like what I have here, we're going to make sure that while we're creating vacuum and we're starting to evacuate it by drawing fluid in, we're only going to make our way up to the maximum line and not past that. We'll be using the manufacturer specified fluid for this, and of course making sure that it is mixed. At this point, I'll get my tool set up. If you're using a vacuum system like I am, it's important to make sure that the system does hold vacuum. We'll just watch this gauge right here and make sure it doesn't drop down into the yellow, or worse, into the red. Now, assuming that hasn't moved into the yellow or into the red, we'll continue on adding coolant. As you can tell, the coolant is making its way above the maximum line, but it's also drawing the coolant down at the same time. At this point, we're going to continue on by releasing pressure here. We'll allow this to make its way down, and then we can top it off as necessary. Okay, the next thing you want to do is hop in the passenger compartment. Start up your vehicle and let it run for a little while. Allow it to get up to normal operating temperature. Have the heat setting in the hot temperature setting. At that point, the thermostat should open up and allow any air inside the system to be able to make its way out to this point and trickle out. The coolant will make its way down a little bit. Just go ahead and make sure it's topped off up to the maximum line. After you've run the vehicle and you're sure you have no air in the system, continue on with your coolant reservoir cap. Okay friends, we've got our vehicle back together. At this point, you want to go ahead and clean up your mess. Check for leaks, and then take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.